Looking to play Fantasy CSGO for the major playoffs? Go to EliteDuels.com and draft 5 players from each tier to make your fantasy team. You earn points based off kills and assists, but lose points on deaths. Over $100,000 in prizes has already been won. Create your account and draft now. You can use the code JULES, that's DUELS, JULES, when you deposit and earn $5 free. Must be 18 years old or older. Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome back to the podcast. It's been a while. I just wanted to give you a quick update before we get into the meat and potatoes of things, which would be my preview of the 4 quarterfinal matches for the Berlin Major. And that's, of course, extremely exciting. Cannot wait. Less than a day away. It's going to be really, really awesome. But before we get into my preview, I wanted to give you a quick couple updates as to what to expect with the podcast. I have recorded a couple episodes. We have Sponge and we have Anders. And those are more general podcasts. We're not talking about the major, which is why I've been delaying the release of those until after the major. I didn't feel like it really made too much sense. And I felt like it would be cool to get that to you guys after the major's done, so we can focus on the major whilst the major's going on. Now, we do talk Counter-Strike with those two individuals, but with Anders, it is a deep esoteric dive into his mind, which is a scary place. but no, it's a lot of fun. We talked about just everything. I honestly, there's so many different topics. But if you're a fan of Anders, if you want to get to know him a little bit more, it will be a great podcast for you to listen to. And I would anticipate doing a lot more of Anders because he's just so easy to talk to about anything. And with Sponge as well, we talked about a lot more Counter-Strike stuff, a lot more ecosystem stuff. Stuff with our expectations on where things will be going in the future and how things are now. We get personal as well in that one. So if you want to get to know Sponge a bit better, then that will be a good podcast for you to listen to as well. But those won't be coming for another week or so until after the major, as I mentioned. But for now, of course, we have this preview episode, and tomorrow we'll be recording, hopefully, touch wood. I have a player lined up, a particularly interesting one. I don't want to get the expectations up just because you know how these things go. I would be an arsehole if I said a name and it didn't end up happening because of cancellations or rescheduling. Everyone's very busy and the timelines are very tight when you're at events like this, especially when we're talking about, like higher profile players who are preparing for, trying to win a major. Pretty big deal. So there is that. I've been trying to keep myself really active on Instagram. So if you haven't checked that out, you can always hit up Instagram.com/DDK esports, the same as my Twitter. And I've been starting to post more fitness stuff there. So if that's kind of your jam, or if you want to interact with me, that's actually a really easy way to do it. There's quite a lot of people that actually send me questions or whatever through the Instagram DM from the podcast. They'll ask me, can you do a podcast on this? Or they'll ask me, hey, I heard you talking about this. Do you have a background in that? And so on and so forth. Or have you read this book? And that stuff's really cool. Like I always love hearing like recommendations and hearing from you guys. So thanks to those that have been doing that. And keep it up. Beyond that, I don't think there's too much to report in terms of what I've been doing, or in terms of how it does relate to you guys. And of course, I'll be doing Glass Moscow immediately after this event, so I'll have some. Hopefully, I'll be able to get some at least one interesting podcast out of that. That will be the goal. I'll be doing definitely some solo episodes. 100% we'll be doing some of those. But otherwise, I think it's about time to get into the podcast. So ENCE versus Renegades will be the first game, and it's what a game it will be. It is, I think it could be an interesting one. Before we talk about the vetoes, which is where we really can begin to understand whether an upset is likely to happen or not, let's talk about the overview of the teams here. And so, of course, we know that Sunny it's a done deal that Sunny will join ENCE for LXCB. LXCB is on the way out after this major. And what I've been really happy to see is that ENCE, of course, they played really well. They 3-0'd it through the new Legends stage to make the playoffs. So, a couple things there, of course, is, one, they look really strong, but we haven't really seen them tested. We've seen Astralis tested. We've seen NRG tested. These teams really had to fight hard. We understand more about where the holes are in their game, who's having a good tournament and so on. But then it's kind of breeze through. So they represent a huge degree of strength, maybe even looking like the strongest team. But at the same time, we can't really know. And this is something that we've seen in the past as well, whereby a team will breeze through to the playoffs, but they haven't played that many matches, so they almost aren't actually in as comfortable a spot themselves as a team that's really, like let's say Astralis, for example, that had a lot of really hard games to get there, but they're going to feel really comfortable at this point because they won those games, because they made it there, because they're really used to the setup, and they've played a lot of Counter-Strike under the pressure and everything like that. So that's helpful, I would say, in a lot of cases. Obviously, of course, it's never the route you want. You want to get the 3-0 route, but everything has its pros and its cons, you know. So that's one thing with ENCE that's interesting to note. Also, again, Sunny is a done deal. He's going to be in the team. LXUB is going to be on the way out after this major. But I've really enjoyed the camaraderie that seems present, the focus, the professionalism. They really look good. Despite that, they look really good. They look like nothing ever happened, you know. And that's an important factor, of course, if you want to try to win this major. And they have a really good side of the bracket. Let's not forget the bottom side of the bracket is absolutely stacked. We'll get into that in a moment, of course. But there's this really cool element here for LXCB where he wants to have the sickest major possible, of course, because he knows he's gone. It's fine. You know, he seems to be, he's made peace with that, which is brilliant. He's got his focus in the right place. He's composed. And what he's doing right now is he's going to try to make his stock skyrocket. If he manages to win the major with ENCE, his stock is going to be so much higher. And so that's obviously such a great opportunity for him as an individual for his career, which is really only at its beginning. So incredible stuff that he's been able to achieve with ENCE already. And of course, we've heard murmurings of teams that want to pick him up, such as FaZe and so on and so forth. But, you know, who wouldn't want to grab him? Very hot prospect coming out of ENCE. So there is that kind of almost slight, there's almost like a slight alleviation of pressure from ENCE because he's going to be going out, and that's dangerous. That's really dangerous, I would say, for the teams that will be playing against ENCE, and perhaps that's some of the reason in which they've been able to have such strong performances already. Renegades are in a really interesting spot because they've had to fight tooth and nail. So actually, what the point that I made about ENCE having a really clean way through, of course, Renegades had the hardest way through. They did the 2-0 or the 0-2 run back all the way, which is really impressive. And of course, they had some tumultuous times with the lineup. They weren't able to really play their proper Counter-Strike, their proper game the last couple of months. So their statistics, if you look back on them, their history is just awful. They've had just, I think it was like 13 or 14 losses in a row. It was really bad. However, you know, that's again, there was some circumstances there that were beyond their control that made things more difficult. And that's always a pain, you know, because you want to go into a tournament with, let's say, 2 months of solid practice or official matches in which you can build that narrative. Like if you are playing really well, we know Renegades, when they are playing well, they're a very good team. And so you want to have that represented in your match history, because it helps to serve as this inner narrative that's backed up by the evidence that then helps you to mentally fortify your game to be really strong, to go into the major knowing we're in a really good spot right now. We're playing some of the best Counter-Strike we've ever played right now, you know, all of that. But instead they come into the major having a horrible time. It's a horrible start, but they managed to just about right the ship in time. So that's definitely going to be beneficial, because now they've made the legend status, so that's going to be a lot of pressure alleviated. Again, huge accomplishment for a team that's an Aussie team. Obviously, JChem is not from the Oceanic region. He is Norwegian, but generally, you know, it's pretty much a core. You know, the core is Aussie, the 4 Aussies. So really impressive that they've managed to do that from the Oceanic region. And, you know, going further is something that will be very difficult as we move into thinking about the map pool here. It is a very difficult situation. You know, I don't think there's really a way that they can win. Renegades, one of the maps in which they can play really well is Vertigo, and that's not really a map that ENCE has any history on. They just don't play it. So I would imagine ENCE would veto that straight away. It's one of the maps where Renegades have shown to be the most dangerous, so definitely we'll see ENCE getting rid of that. And once that's gone, it doesn't really feel like there's anywhere for Renegades to go except Inferno in terms of having maybe some kind of some way to win against ENCE. So I think that's the prognosis, really. It's very grim for Renegades. They have to win Inferno if they're going to want to win this series. And even if they win Inferno, they really have, the odds are really against them. So they're going to have some huge overperformances from some players. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic to see if we get that, and perhaps maybe some underperformances from ENCE. But I think if ENCE just play their bog standard game, they should be able to breeze through that. On top of the fact that they have a lot of experience now as well. Vitality versus AVANGAR. Now, this is a really interesting matchup because I actually think there is an upset potential. There's upset potential on the cards with this matchup. Part of it comes down to the experience issue, I think, in terms of where AVANGAR are at. Because, of course, AVANGAR added in Adren, and you'd think on paper that would be a great pickup, but unfortunately, Adren doesn't seem to really be bringing that individual level since he won a major. It doesn't really seem to be quite be there. I don't know if it's because he lost some of that hunger or what it was. Specifically, we know that Adren he knows how to prepare, he knows how to get really, really good. It's maybe he's just not putting in, I don't know if for him it takes 80-hour, 100-hour weeks or what it is. But Adren's been very flat, which has been unfortunate. If not for Buster having insane performances in the New Legends phase, they wouldn't have come through. Jane was clutch. He's a absolute key piece on this team, being the dedicated AWPer, of course, and he's very clutch himself. He doesn't quite show the same peak as a lot of the other top 8 AWPers, though, so far. This would be one of those moments where he could show that, hey, hang on, I'm actually comfortable with the pressure. I understand it now. And I'm going to use this pressure and the moment of being in the major, like in the playoffs on stage, I'm going to leverage that to break into the next level of my game. Now, that happens for some players. I think that's going to happen for James. I don't know if it'll be this tournament or not, but he's going to need to be key. Of course, being up against Zywoo is no easy feat. And Zywoo is incredibly smart, very consistent, and very deadly. And if he wins a major in his rookie year, that's going to be pretty damn sick. And can't really put it past Vitality that they are absolute contenders for that. However, again, AVANGAR, very dangerous team potentially. Now, one of the issues I've seen with AVANGAR is sometimes Keycut is a little bit inconsistent. When Keycut is on point, he's very deadly and pretty key when it comes to the entry fragging, breaking open bomb sites, and getting quick opportunities for AVANGAR to seize. And that's really important for a team like AVANGAR that's very tactical because they need the players that can brawl a little bit. And I think Keycut and Sanji have really shown that capability. So I'm looking for, we really need to see good performances from everybody. We especially Adren, because he's been so flat over the course of the tournament so far. And at Vitality, you don't really even need to go and talk too much about their individuals. They're, of course, known for incredible individual strength. But if we go into a quick discussion of the map pool, we this is where things get interesting because Vitality are not going to want to play AVANGAR on Train. Vitality are not really a team that plays Train, and so it's one of, in fact, it is the best map statistically. Train and Inferno are the best maps statistically, and Vertigo for AVANGAR. They've got really high win percentages on all those maps. It's between 67 and 71% on all those maps. Inferno, Train, and Vertigo. Vertigo might actually be one of the maps where this series goes, which might actually be part of the reason why this series could be really exciting. Overpass is an interesting one because it can absolutely be a pick. I think AVANGAR are going to need to avoid Mirage. I think that's going to be the one they have to avoid here. Against Vitality. Vitality 80% on Mirage across the last 14 maps played. AVANGAR 33% against 23% with 12 maps played. That is a huge mismatch. Not only that, stylistically, Vitality are the kind of team that will absolutely dominate AVANGAR on a map like Mirage. So I think Mirage is out for AVANGAR, and Vitality will get rid of Train. And I think we're going to get, as I mentioned, I think Overpass and Vertigo picks might come up. I think Dust 2 is a little bit scarier, but I think that Dust 2 or Inferno are definitely going to be the third maps. It's going to be up between Dust 2 and Inferno. And given that both teams are very confident on Inferno, I would expect to see Inferno. So I'm expecting to see Inferno, Overpass, and Vertigo. This should be a really fun series, as there are two very different teams. The only issue is that in a prolonged series, in a prolonged best of 3, the individual play really does make a difference. The clutches really do make a difference, and I'm really worried about the lack of experience on AVANGAR at this level. I'm really worried about their individuals wilting under the pressure. But unlike the first matchup, I definitely think there's a possibility we could get an upset in this one. NRG versus Na'Vi is a particularly interesting match as well. I mean, they're all interesting matchups at this stage. I mean, we've got some of the best teams in the world. Well, we have the best teams in the world, right? So Na'Vi have looked really weird in terms of their shape. On paper, when they added Boomish, I was like, this makes a lot of sense. Boomish adds a great degree of skill. He can do pretty much everything. He's very, very skilled. He can be a great support player, role player, really good communicator, great for camaraderie, great for the energy on the team, really positive guy. Like he's absolutely the kind of guy that Na'Vi need. He's also really good as, if they wanted to use him as like a secondary caller or something like that, is something that he could do as well. So Boomish was a great pickup. The problem is that we are seeing Simple have poor performances. We're seeing Zeus obviously struggling as well. Now this is a bit odd. Boomish is doing a good job, but it's been Electronic and Flamey that have really kept the team alive, and they've looked awful so far. Now they've made it to the playoffs, and this is where we could see that transformation, that Jekyll and Hyde moment for Na'Vi, where Simple really starts rising to the occasion. And they're going to be up against a team like NRG, a team in which they'll have huge respect for. So, and one bit of extra context here is that Zeus is on the way out. We're led to believe. So that's going to be that could be something that plays on the minds of Na'Vi, and it could be partly a part of the why we're seeing poorer performances individually from Zeus. Now, credit to Zeus individually. He is, although he's not great, he is an incredible in-game leader. I don't think anyone could deny what he's achieved as an in-game leader in his career. He also possesses a quality that is extremely rare within in-game leaders in Counter-Strike and in general, which is the quality of being a leader of men, not just being a gamer, not just being a guy that understands what's happening in the game in the macro and micro sense and so on, and understands tactics and can find cool nades and stuff. No, he's a leader of men. He's a leader in terms of the energy, the camaraderie. He really rallies his troops and leads by example in many respects. And that kind of stuff is really important. There's very few people like that. So unfortunately, though, it does seem like he might be on the way out. So Na'Vi are going to hopefully be able to stabilize it going into the playoffs. I imagine they're going to try to put that out of their mind. And I'm hoping that they're going to rise to their opponent. Na'Vi are kind of one of those teams. Some teams just absolutely dominate people no matter who they are, or they just play their best no matter who they're playing against. But some teams will play to a lesser level depending on their situation and their opponents. And generally speaking, Na'Vi have tended to do that in the past. So I'm inclined to believe that we could get a really competitive match. But if Simple can't find his footing, as he was unable to in the New Legends phase, then they are going to get crushed by what seems to be an NRG that looks better than ever. Cirque actually playing like a god. And this is amazing to see. If he keeps up that form into the playoffs, I don't see what Na'Vi are going to do. I think from a map pool perspective, if we think about the vetoes as well, there's not too many places that Na'Vi can really go to beyond an Inferno, beyond a nuke against NRG. Overpass could be one as well, potentially, for Na'Vi, but I feel like what we're going to see is neither team is going to care about Vertigo. No one wants to play Vertigo. We're probably going to see NRG get rid of Overpass, as they haven't had good results there, and that's one of Na'Vi's better maps. Na'Vi will probably get rid of Train, as that's insane for NRG. Let's not forget, not only is it an 85% win rate across 13 maps, we saw that insane series where Sark really unlocked himself against Astralis in the New Legends phase. That was an insane series. If you missed that, it's probably one of the best games of the tournament. And there was also, of course, the Dust 2 game as well that we saw with Crazy and Astralis as well. So those are probably the two best games of the tournament so far. If you missed those, you should really catch them before you... Well, I don't know if there'll be time, but if you have time to before the major playoffs begin, you should try to do that. So Train will be avoided as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something like Mirage, Inferno, and a nuke. I think that would make for the best series. I really don't want to see Dust 2. I think that will be a domination for Na'Vi, for NRG. I think NRG will do really well there. Vertigo, we don't really know anything about these two teams on Vertigo. So that's what I'm hoping for. I want to see that Mirage, I want to see that Inferno, and I want to see that nuke. And I think we'll have a pretty competitive series if Simple can turn up. But I will definitely leaning on the heavily towards NRG, given that they've looked fantastic so far. Astralis and Liquid is a really interesting one. Of course, these two teams have played each other so many damn times. Astralis are trying to fight for the number one title in the world again. They want to get back on top. They want to defend their major title. Obviously, they won against ENCE in the previous major. So in this situation, I think it's really difficult to predict. Astralis are going to get rid of Mirage, and Liquids are going to get rid of Train. And then things are really open. I don't know in a series like this if we'll see either team wanting to go to a Vertigo, because even Liquid have a 100% win record there. Astralis' record is 67% across 3 maps. So you don't, I think, really, even though it's 100% sounds great for Liquid, you don't really know what to expect. And because the Train and Mirage bans are just going to happen, Mirage for Astralis as a permaban and Train as Liquid's permaban here, I don't think either team's going to risk the variance. Astralis did struggle a little bit on Overpass, obviously losing to AVANGAR previously in this tournament, but typically it's an incredible map for them. It's very strong for Liquid too, though. One thing that's interesting is we may see a return to Nuke for Liquid. The issue, for Astralis. I wonder if they're going to try to pull that out, because teams have not really been worrying about Astralis' Nuke for a while now, and as Astralis has been losing games. So it wouldn't surprise me if Astralis would have tried to tighten Nuke back up again in the leading into these playoffs, knowing that they would have their most important games ahead of themselves. What would be an absolute classic though, and I really hope that we get to see it, is an Inferno. Obviously, both teams have an insane record in Inferno. 88% for Astralis, 91% for Liquid. So I would imagine we're going to see Inferno as a comfort map coming through for these teams. Perhaps it could be like the decider, the classic Inferno decider. And that's that reason that is always the deciding map is because pretty much every team can play it and every team feels comfortable and drilled and routined on that map. So that's often why that's the case. In terms of where we go for the picks, I think I'm really wondering if Astralis might try to throw a nuke in there. The issue is that you can't really pick a map against Liquid where they're not extremely strong, so you have to really pick into your own strengths or any ways that Liquid have seen where they can maybe anti-strat Liquid to a certain extent, and I really feel like that's of course the case. Liquid are definitely going in as the favorites, so we're going to likely see, I think, an Overpass, a Nuke, and an Inferno. I'm thinking that we'll see those 3 maps. If we get a Vertigo, that'll be amazing. I think Astralis will try to avoid Dust too, and I don't know if Liquid would be confident picking that, because Dust 2 can be quite swingy as a map. I don't think you generally want to go for that pick. So we'll see. I might be wrong. But yeah, either way, absolute banger of a series. Definitely the highlight of the quarterfinals. And I will definitely be going for that Liquid win. And there we go. I think that pretty much covers it in terms of where I'm at as far as the little preview goes for these games. As far as the most likely upset, I think AVANGAR Vitality. As far as the most high level game, of course, Liquid and Liquid and Astralis. What could be the most surprising game is NRG versus Na'Vi. I think that could be very explosive if Na'Vi really step up. If we do get to see number 1 in the world simple, that's going to be a crazy scrappy game, and that should be really, really fun. And the ENCE Renegades game, I think obviously that's the only flat one, I would say, or I'm predicting to be flat in terms of not too interesting. But all the other games, I think, have a huge degree of points, which might be very interesting. And for ENCE and Renegades to be interesting, Renegades have to have some crazy over performances in my book. So there you go. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope this was in some way interesting and titillating for you guys, as we are now we're less than a day away from the playoffs of this next major. I cannot wait. Cheers. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to support the podcast, there are many ways you can do that. One of my favorites is hearing feedback, whether it be some production feedback if I'm messing something up on the technical side of things, or maybe it's a guest that you want to hear from, or maybe a topic that hasn't been covered yet that you'd really like to hear about as well. Anything like that, or maybe just some questions, whatever it is. Send me a comment on YouTube. Lots of people like to do that. Or perhaps what you can do is hit me up on Instagram as well. DDK Esports is my Instagram channel, and you can just send a DM there, and I'm pretty responsive typically. Now, if you want to go a step further, patreon.com/DDK Esports is how you can contribute financially to the growth of this podcast. And I think that really about covers it. So thank you very much for listening. I look forward to making the next podcast for you. Cheers.